David. I have met a neon prophet. His name is Denis Villeneuve. Blade Runner 2049, an epic in neon, a new modernist masterwork. I really loved it. I absolutely love it. What did you think, David?
I think it was masterful, and it's very unique way of how. Oh, there's so many complex subjects to break down, but if my overall impression of it is really just like the folly of eugenics and the sacrifice of our humanity and what it takes or what it would take to get to the holy grail of immortality, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is a movie about the pursuit of the Holy Grail, and it's probably the best one that deals with that kind of myth, that kind of mythos.
Mm-hmm.
It elevates that kind of biblical myth to the level of God, just neon Socrates. I don't even know what to say. Man. It's so good. But first of all, let's get some superficial notions out of the way. Let's get the design down. Let's get the cinematography down, done by Roger Deakins, who did Skyfall recently. He's an incredibly talented cinematographer. And I do want to give most of the credit, though, to Denis Villeneuve, because I feel like Blade Runner 2049 is 100% his movie, even if he says that it's half his and half Deakins. The amount of actual practical effects and real life sets that you could actually reach out and touch are astonishing. For a movie like this made in the time that it was, which was 2017. Oh, the style is phenomenal. It's like, it's Jodorowsky meets Stanley Kubrick, really. It's actually really phenomenal. New modernism has a savior now, and yeah, his name is Denis Villeneuve. Also, the disclaimer, or not disclaimer, just the proclamation, the declaration. We are both huge fans of Ridley Scott's original film, and I'm a huge Philip K. Dick fan myself. I ain't Philip A. K. Dickin' you, in the words of Zach De La Roca. But so I love Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Also, before I forget, I love that false pets or robotic pets played a large part in this film, or at least played a factor in it, because it's a huge part of Philip K. Dick's original novel. But we are huge fans of the future noir that Ridley Scott was able to capture. Huge fans of Harrison Ford's performance, of Sean Young's, of Rutger Hauer, and Daryl Hannah. Edward James Olmos, who has a great cameo in this. We were huge fans of that film and of everything it had to say about humanity, the human condition, all sorts of things like that. So just get that out of the way. We think that that's a masterpiece as well. But I'm going to ask the hard question right away. Do you think Blade Runner 2049 is superior to the original Blade Runner?
Yes, and here's why. And I have to gush over it first because I have to recognize and respect the science fiction aspect of it and how there's these skill sets that these directors and actors bring to the table. For example, Sylvia Hoeks, she was phenomenal because not only is she an actress, or really an actor who really understands the artistic elements of acting so well that she can play a 12-year-old kind of sociopath.
Yeah,
really.
That's the thing. Her character had the mentality of a 12-year-old, of a 12-year-old replicant. Sylvia Hoeks, okay, it's going to change. If it hasn't already, it's changing to a picture of Sylvia Hoeks right now. And get used to it, because you're going to see this picture for like the next 5 minutes or so. Because she rocked my world. She was absolutely the best part of this movie as an idea, archetype, as a performance, as an actress, as something to look at, as something to marvel over. And I do also think that Blade Runner 2049 is better, and it's actually falls all on Sylvia Hoeks' back. I give her 100% credit for this film being better because her character was fascinating, but at the same time, the reason the original Blade Runner, for me, is so amazing, so unforgettable, is because of its villain. Because of Roy Batty, played expertly well in Rutger Hauer's finest hour. Sylvia Hoeks rises to that occasion. This Dutch model with a came out of nowhere.
Martial arts skills.
With martial art, yeah. She's I found my new dream woman, guys. she's it. This is it. Holy shit! The amount of talent on her. When she confronts Robin Wright, the Madam, and is grabbing her hand, making her cut herself on the glass that she's holding, and when she screams at her, like, where is it? I can't do it justice at all, obviously, but where is he? Oh my god. In that one moment, more emotion is expressed than any other character, and it's the worst kind of damaged emotion that you don't ever want to be around. But yeah, Sylvia Hoeks is amazing.
Yeah.
What I was saying was she eclipsed Roy Batty. She eclipsed Tears in the Rain. She met Rutger Hauer on every level and then beat him, because I'm not afraid of Rutger Hauer. I empathize with Rutger Hauer's character. And that's another strength of Blade Runner, but that's what Agent K or Officer K is for in this film. You empathize with him. Sylvia Hoeks, I am dead fucking scared of. She scares me to my boots, because I know if I ever met her, she is literally Niander Wallace's angel of death. He refers to her as his greatest angel. She's the angel of death. If you ever meet her, you're gone. That's it. You are going to be gone. And yeah, the fact that she is actually, with the mentality, the programming of a 12-year-old's sensibilities, the way she speaks makes so much more sense with the, you believed him because we never lie and he told you. Like, it's the scariest fucking thing in the world.
It's absolutely terrifying, for sure.
And, oh god, her casual fucking viciousness is so good. Sylvia Hoeks, I'm glad I got this out of the way in the first 10 minutes, is the reason that I think this film is a masterwork of the modern film era. And of the modern film era, I mean the new modern film era. Like last year, less than a year ago, this film hit theaters. Hit theaters in October. Fuck yeah. Okay. So now let's get into more of the meat. I'm sure that I will praise Sylvia Hoeks again because she's my new obsession. We're going to move on to the actual themes. The actual themes of this film. And before, this is a film that is in debt to the film before it. So, David, I want you to just really briefly condense the themes of Blade Runner 1, and then, you talk for a while, because then go into the themes of Blade Runner 2049, how it capitalizes, how it transforms those original themes, and the new ideas that it brings to the table.
Yeah, thank you for letting me speak about this, because I have a lot to say, and I really want to, not even just that I have a lot to say, but I think it needs to be said kind of thing. And how I'm going to start approaching this is... my friend Zach here, he's so good with artistic enterprise, artistic knowledge, artistic skill sets, that he has this window of expertise into what's happening artistically. And because it's a science fiction film, there's also this other side to it, this science fiction truth, right? This scientific truth. And that is first manifested in the original Blade Runner, when we see this sort of like this pursuit of, a more superior kind of human, right? And so that's what the original idea of a replicant is. And we see this taken into a sort of a dystopian political narrative of a corporation or an oligarchy that has the power and the control of this science, of this scientific technology, and how that is used against the people, against the livings of modern society, against what it means to really be human. And we see that in Bati's character and his performance in the original Blade Runner. We see this sort of sacrificing of these human elements, but at the very end, right before he's dying in the rain, you see that human performance, that human truth, even coming from the most synthetic of sources. And that's what made the original Blade Runner so phenomenal for me.
Absolutely.
And that was just ramped up 10 degrees in this film. And the reason why I say that is because we see this sort of blending of more science, of more scientific understanding, more scientific skill sets, and more artistic skill sets simultaneously. And we're seeing this Tyrell Corporation evolving and transforming, and that is that particular lens, that window into a possible future we do not want to be in. We do not want to be in that future, and it's terrifying and chilling.
We have the Wallace
it's
Corporation.
grappling. It's honestly, it's like existential dread, and the reason why it's able to capture that kind of deep existential fear that we have within us is because it's manifested in that conversation between Sylvia Hoeks' character, Angel of Death, and then Jared Leto. And they're talking it in a biblical proportion because that is the scale of this film. That is the scale of the science and the art coming together, and this sort of eugenic supremacy.
Absolutely. What did you think? You mentioned Jared Leto.
Mm-hmm.
Did phenomenal. Was in 2 scenes in the film. Did phenomenally well as Wallace Niander. And yeah, the Tyrell Corporation, how it transformed, how it went bankrupt, and now we have the Wallace Corporation.
Yes.
So the only thing more terrifying than the Tyrell Corporation, which the first film can demonstrate were made mistakes when they made their replicants, is a company that never does, is a man who is a complete genius and near cyborg, is Wallace Niander. I wanted to get your opinions on the character of Niander, on the way that he speaks in biblical imagery and oh my god, near hypnotic nursery rhymes.
Oh yeah, there's one particular scene, that just really made my hair stand on its ends.
Go for it. He was only in 2. I want to hear your deconstruct Niander, deconstruct Wallace for me.
So what's happening here, or at least what I can see is happening, at best of my abilities, how much I know about politics and science, what's really being said is it's taking oligarchy and it's taking that sort of syndicalism, it's taking that sort of like this particular power dynamic of the original Blade Runner, the original Tyrell Corporation. Again, it's maximizing it to the nth degree. It's going above and beyond, and it's saying, what is the finality of this particular paradigm, right? Absolutely. The paradigm of eugenics. And you see that manifested so simply in so few words by a character, by a villain who embodies this. He's saying, the moment that we are born, we are afraid to lose it first.
Yes.
And that was so chilling to see that. And then to see that the humans, or well, the replicants, but they're being played by humans, but you see the replicants are coming out of plastic bags. And that just like representative of like how American society and societies in general are taking our technologies, and we're using like this processing, this bastardization of eating food, like eating chicken, eating meat, and it's coming in Walmart in packages, and then that is just taken to its nth degree in the movie Blade Runner 2049, and we see this sort of packaging of humans.
Absolutely. That, you're right, that is a brilliant scene. It's a brilliant way to introduce the man behind the curtain. It's phenomenal. Let's move on to another character. Let's move on to Officer K. Let's talk about Officer K overall, because what I loved about the film is that it's a film of multiple messages, but I feel that one of the most human messages it imparts me with is that we all feel like we are the hero. We all feel that we are the Messiah. We all have a Messiah complex of sorts. Like, for instance, when he finds out he is not the next step in evolution, that he is not the savior, that he is not the martyr. When he finds out that it's actually a girl, a woman that Rick Deckard and Rachel had, he is crushed. And the character he's speaking with tells him, "We all wish it was us. You thought it was you?" And that's a great message to impart with us, because even though none of us are the saviors or messiahs, he is solely responsible for how that movie ends up, because she says that he has to kill Rick in order to save the child. And that's the most human thing you can do, is dying for what's right. And he does die for what's right, but it's not that. It's not political. He dies so that he could reunite a father and a daughter. And that's actually the most human thing you can do in that scenario.
Correct,
and you do die a martyr of sorts, but by yourself, while it's snowing, on the steps of salvation.
That's a very powerful way to put it.
He's a true knight of the round table, really. He's really great.
And that,
a true Templar. A true Templar, actually. He's a protector.
And that's also going into the main character, how we see that the more important role is humanity's creativity and imagination.
Absolutely.
More than it is about the finality of what the pursuit of the Holy Grail, right?
Yes.
And it's showing that our humanity and our imagination, even if we make mistakes, we still have that humanity which triumphs all, kind of thing. And then that's manifested in where our imaginations can take us and what they can create. And so the imagination process here can create this entire movie.
Exactly.
And then that's embodied in the
because what
creation
what
process.
David's hinting at or talking about really is that the true Holy Grail is a memory maker and plants memories into replicants so that they feel more human.
Right.
And if it's about human creativity, then that next step in the chain of evolution, that child born of androids, is the most creative thing there is, because she makes memories for all the others.
Yeah.
So she is that beacon of creativity, and she's so. We watch her create memories, and she is so empathetic. She is so in tune with the memories she's creating, because some of them are autobiographical, including one very important one of a horse that she implanted into Ryan Gosling, Officer K's memories.
Mm. And then you see that same symbolism reflected in the Wallace Corporation and how it's built like a gigantic pyramid.
Thank you. I forgot. Yeah. Built exactly like a gigantic pyramid. So Jared Leto as a self-styled sphinx, love Sylvia Hoeks as one of those like amalgam creatures, half woman, half demon. Like, it is fucking brilliant. Yeah, that's my favorite set, and that's actually practical. The lighting used to make it look like riptide, like waves are going on. I thought for sure that was some sort of CGI filter, but no. Villeneuve actually practically established that lighting. That is one of my favorite sets, I think, in film, is every part of the inside of the Wallace Corporation, the pyramid, which is incredible. Incredible. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot.
Yeah, no worries. I love to bring that up because this is just like, I mean, it blew my mind when I first saw the scale and magnitude of how huge that was. And it was representative of how the centralization of power sort of creates its own demon.
Yeah.
And that's really, really fascinating, because that parallels along with the sort of ending message that you cannot contain the human spirit. You cannot filter, you cannot take a scientific process and create the will and rebellion of a human.
You can't even contain the human spirit within humanity.
Right, you can't.
It's contagious.
And then not only that, yeah, exactly. You see this sort of like bleeding of humanity into the replicants, and then they themselves take on the champion, the human championing spirit of overthrowing tyranny. And that is so good that they were able to fit that in there.
Kay, you've been doing well with that one. What's that, madam? A soul. Like, Robin Wright was great in this. This is the best I've seen her in a while. She's on House of Cards, and of course known for The Princess Bride. She was fantastic. Robin Wright. But let's move on to what did you think of? What did you think of the relationship between Officer K and Joy?
Oh wow, that was really interesting. You could see, like, even from the very foundation, the very core of it, there's this sort of inauthenticity, this sort of like this fabrication of a pseudo
Who wants it to be
relationship.
real more?
And that's the beauty of it, is like, you never hear Ryan Gosling's character say, "I love you."
No.
And that's fascinating.
Because he thinks that she's paid to say, and she is paid to say, they're programmed to say those things. Like, he tells her, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say all these things about me. Like,
yeah. And then you see that it's like, it's coming from this giant mega corporation that's basically a prostitute almost. Like, it's just a simulated prostitute.
And after...
and then that is directly put on.
And of course the Wallace Corporation makes it. Yeah, and after the creepiest part of that whole relationship is not that three-way. That was awesome. That was really cool. We'll go into that next. But the creepiest part of it was the aftermath. After love destroys, eliminates joy. Love kills joy. Oh my God.
You just got that? Love kills joy.
When love kills joy by stepping on her portable
and they chose those names on purpose.
They definitely did. But I didn't realize it until I said it out loud. Love killed joy. Okay. When joy is gone, right after she says, "I love you," her last words are love, too. Her last word is love, and love kills her. Okay, that's just... Villeneuve, I love you. But when he's walking down the boardwalk, and her advertisement comes and interacts with him, and like she's completely naked and nude, and he's interacting with it, or at least looking at it. Ryan Gosling, Nicholas Winding Refn understands that you could just put a camera on Gosling's face and you'll just feel sad as a result of looking at it. Like he emotes sadness like no other modern actor. That's such a creepy, such a wonderful scene. I hope you're sad. I'm glad you're satisfied with our product. It's so wonderful. But now let's go into a scene that probably throws a lot of people off. I think it's a wonderful scene for Joy to kind of try to show her love in her very limited understanding of what human love is, and that's the three-way that she has with a prostitute who she somewhat translucently not absorbs, but the prostitute essentially absorbs her characteristics. They absorb each other so that she could finally reach out and touch him because she's not transparent anymore. She's not completely see-through. And then, did that scene draw any emotions from you? Because it certainly did from me.
Yeah.
And I felt like Ryan Gosling, it wasn't a gift to Gosling. I feel like Officer K did that for Joy instead.
There's a quote, I'm not sure who it's by exactly. It says, "You cannot find truth in untruth, and likewise you cannot find untruth in truth." And I think that's ringing very true to what's happening here. What we're seeing Ryan Gosling's character, Agent K, really Joe, right? Turning into this sort of this human, or at least trying to understand what more and more what it means to be human. And then this is coalescing into this scene, this sort of three-way, and you're seeing this all of these people trying to get to an original source of what it means to be human. Yeah. But the fact that they cannot have a non-human in order to do that, that is the most important thing, is that there is
everyone is artificial.
Everyone's artificial, right, but at the same time, you do have that prostitute is a real person.
No, that prostitute was...
She was a replicant?
Yeah, she was, too.
I thought she was. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, you still see it. You see that sort of... it's what's it called? Emergence? That's the scientific idea of... And that's what I'm really trying to get at here, is I'm trying to get at this idea of emergence and how maybe that's not the right explanation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's important, and that's what's being said there. It's is really emergence the final answer to what it means to be human?
Yeah.
And that movie, that particular scene, is saying no.
You could always argue that the heavy-handed metaphor of joy slips through your fingertips. Joy you can't hold in your hands. Joy is naivety. And that's everything that Joy is in this film as well. So you could also argue as a prostitute and a very lonely policeman attempting to hold Joy in their hands, but none of them get a actual physical grasp on it as well. Let's talk about the dynamics between Kay and other characters. First and foremost, 23 minutes in, which is fine, because Harrison Ford himself did not enter this film until about an hour and 30 minutes
right
in.
Around there.
First of all, superficially, I think Harrison Ford did wonderfully. I actually got the sense that he very much enjoyed returning to this role. I think more than he did for Han Solo, personally. I think that he felt like there was something to do in this story still. And he was very, very good. And honestly, he only has 3 scenes where he speaks dialogue, because in the wonderful scene with Jared Leto and Sylvia Hoeks, he doesn't say anything but a sentence, maybe. Sentence or 2 in that entire scene, where it's essentially Niander Wallace monologuing about gods and demons and life, and it's incredible. Let's talk about the dynamic between Officer K and Rick Deckard and how it changes. Because at first the dynamic, because it clearly telegraphs throughout the film that you are also supposed to think, along with your main character, that Officer K is the Holy Grail, is the key to this whole thing, is the son of Rick Deckard. So in the first scene of them together, you definitely get the dynamic of son trying to get to know anything about his mother and father. And that dynamic is thrown out the window by the time the next scene arrives.
I see where you're going and building off of this, because it's really interesting to see how even though there's this sort of synthetic source of like the actual genetics of it. If you actually like really break it down, I wanted to bring up a point that there's this technology today called CRISPR-Cas9. And it's this sort of scientific technology that is pioneering eugenics and trying to make, at least more efficient animals, organisms, plants, whatever the case might be. And then that idea is taken in Blade Runner 2049 to another maximal degree, and it's showing that and that humans come on an assembly line kind of thing. So then that's a very complex and nuanced thing to say, because in a way they're not saying that this is probably going to happen, that there's going to be the synthetic creation of androids, but it's more like saying this is what an education system can do to you, when that education system literally tells you how to live your life in every single way. And that's why you see this sort of like, basically Ryan Gosling's character has this sort of slave mentality, and that's why he meets Harrison Ford later on, because he's so enmeshed in it, and he's finally questioning that slave mentality, and that the only way he can get away from that is to have a human element.
That's the beautiful thing, because he's a slave who wakes up one morning and thinks that he's the savior, from slave to savior. But at the end of the film, he realizes he's not the savior, he's not the Messiah, but he is a Templar knight. He is a protector of the Holy Grail. And that climax, the battle between love and Kay, so between an angel of death and a Templar knight over the protection of what is essentially Joseph, in the rain, and it's a battle, it's a fist fight, it's a fight to the death, which amounts to biblical kind of intensity and import, because Ryan Gosling, the dynamic between him has transformed into something even more mature, into something like a protector, like a knight, like something so pure, something that you could put your finger on, and something that you can. So intimate for me. I really like that the transformative nature of the dynamic there. And what did you think of the dynamic between Love and Kay? The way Love spoke of Kay like a dog, but also very much liked him. She said it as well, that she likes him. Kay doesn't seem to really think too much about anyone but Joy. He seems to be unavailable for a lot of different characters' emotions, actually.
That's very true, and you do see that reflected in how he rejects a lot of people throughout. Like, I mean, there's a sexual advance by his boss.
Yeah, by the madam.
Yeah, by the madam.
And he turns it down. He doesn't like real girls, right?
Yeah, and then there's that one as well, that scene. And I find that really interesting, because it's this sort of... what's really being expressed here, or at least what I can see, is that there's this sort of like this alienation, because he's identified with the fact that he's a replicant, the fact that he's not real. And so then that gives that sort of alienation quality to himself that he himself kind of lives through.
Yeah.
And then you see that reflected in a modern society here and today with consumerism to a degree.
And just, I guess, to put the nail in that coffin, I think that Love looks at Kay in a kind of like, if she has a 12-year-old mentality, looks at him in the competitive way a sister would look at her older or younger brother, because she keeps saying, "I'm better. I knew I was better."
Right.
Like, I'm better. Come on, do your fucking job.
And the dialectic opposite, or really just the way in which we can gain knowledge, is by understanding the opposite, which is also expressed in Blade Runner 2049, in that scene where Ryan Gosling's character is meeting up with the person who created his memories. Yeah. And that kind of artifice is him. It's like a sinking realization that at first he thinks he actually killed like his own sibling or whatever, or his own parents, excuse me. But then he finds out that that's fake and that's actually her memories. And so then he's liberated from that, but then that's why she's crying.
Yes.
But you also see that she still appreciates and enjoys nature, and she has this sort of fascination with the beauty of things as they are. She doesn't want to change it. She doesn't want to alter it. She just wants to look at it and enjoy it and really just revel in the beauty of it as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that authenticity that is still in the movie. It's still there, and it's still very real and powerful. And then you see that reflected and completely bastardized by Ryan Gosling's character, and then again by Love, by how
Absolutely.
she's sitting there trying to think that her way, her idea of authenticity is correct when she doesn't even know what authenticity is because she never experienced it herself.
Love
And
isn't
that's
authentic.
why they said the miracle. That's why they kept referencing the miracle.
Yeah, and I love that they went back to the Dave Bautista line of "You've never experienced a miracle." Like,
Yeah.
never witnessed a miracle. Oh my god. Yeah, that was a great opening scene as well. But I love what you just said there. Yeah, the dialectical opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And those two sides is painting a way or paving a way toward the truth or the realization here that what's really important is being an authentic human, creating art, enjoying the things
Yes.
as they are, and not trying to change it. And that's why she is the embodiment of a savior and not Ryan Gosling's character.
Absolutely.
Because he's not creating.
And Villeneuve,
fighting.
of course, frames her as sacred. I mean, you see her,
Mm-hmm.
she has to be removed from the rest of society because she has to make these pure memories, obviously, of a time that never existed for these androids, because the time that exists in 2049 is dystopian as fuck and awful and dirty
Very
and
awful.
grimy. So the memories she creates are very pure and very... She can make memories of heartbreak. She doesn't just create happiness in these things, but they're real. They're more real than that could possibly be created inside of that world, I feel, as well, because she's pure of spirit. But also, I was gonna say, yeah, man, hit the nail on the head. Yeah, you got something to go?
Yeah, I wanted to keep going with the Wallace Corporation and how it manifests and how they're really, I think they're conveying, the directors, I mean, Denis Villeneuve, he is painting a very complex picture and he's putting it into a very simple way, a very easy to digest format of this sort of like this magnificent but also terrifying aspect of what it means to centralize that power, and how that inauthenticity builds up and forms up into layers and layers and layers of inauthenticity and the syntheticness, and that the fact that they chose a pyramid is showing exactly how a lot like how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. They didn't do it necessarily off of slave labor, but they did it off of like an indentured servitude, and people were begrudgingly creating this giant pyramid. And then that's kind of the same exact thing we're seeing here in Blade Runner 2049. We're seeing this build off of this synthetic, gigantic corporation off of a previous one, or at least the skeleton of a previous inauthenticity.
Yes.
Creates an even further monster, and that the only way to absolve or to destroy that is to embrace authenticity.
Yeah, and the only thing more frightening than Tyrell, which was an inefficient organization, is Wallace, who efficiently makes androids.
And it shows me that the transition and the original movie of Blade Runner, the political message is saying, you should try and avoid greed. You should try and avoid greedy corporations and supporting them, and you should want to endow yourself with a sense of responsibility. And then the reason why you don't want the Tyrell Corporation to succeed, why you don't want the Wallace Corporation to succeed, is because that's what happens. It turns into the Wallace Corporation. And then that turns into totalitarianism. And you see Jared Leto's character who says the chilling line, "I have millions."
Mm-hmm.
And that he is literally trying to extinguish human life with his own synthetic version.
Exactly. Absolutely. And gosh, I do want to point out that Villeneuve respects the lore of Blade Runner enough to never actually definitively answer the age-old debate of whether or not Deckard is a replicant. That Wallace offers when he speaks to him. He's like, maybe you were programmed to meet her, or maybe you weren't programmed at all. He offers both ideas as possibilities, so that debate can wage on until the end of time.
That's brilliance of it because, and I think a big enterprise into art is to not only have a subliminal message, or not a subliminal, a hidden message, excuse me. To have a hidden message, you have to dig into, but when you see it and you find it, it's still mysterious.
Yes. And we live in a time where a lot of films are all about subverting expectations, bait and switching you. And this is the one example of it working masterfully. This is how you do a proper subversion of expectations, is you clearly telegraph. Like we were even talking about with the Messiah complex, you clearly telegraph it, and then you take it away from us, but you don't give us nothing in return. What he gave in return was the human spirit, was humanity.
Right.
And that's a proper gift. That's a proper exchange for simple entertainment. And this truly is a new modern epic, a new modern, I will say, masterwork, masterpiece, in the idea that it even draws influence, yes, from Jodorowsky, yes, from Kubrick, those are the obvious ones, but it draws it from the Wachowskis as well. You can see definitely stylistic elements that the Wachowskis would bring to not only films like The Matrix, but Cloud Atlas also. And that kind of language is properly utilized by Villeneuve and by Deakins to help create this wonderful, mesmerizing, intuitive tapestry that is Blade Runner 2040. Sorry, 2049.
So yeah, I really enjoyed the bait and switch that the Wachowskis used in The Matrix and Matrix Reloaded, and making Neo question whether he was still in the Matrix or not. And that's still debated to this day. And there's a conspiracy behind it, whether Neo's in the Matrix or not. And then that same exact thing is then transmitted into Blade Runner 2049 with the scene between Jared Leto and Harrison Ford. And then Jared Leto's character saying, saying this thing of, do you think that memory is created or not, or fabricated? Is mathematical precision, or is it your real feelings? And then that was in The Matrix Reloaded, and also in The Matrix, the original one as well. And that is brilliant. It's the fact that they made it obvious. So they were obviously giving credit to where the original idea was coming from, but then they took it and they ran with it. Right. Denis Villeneuve ran with that and made it even more powerful. He was, putting it in this perspective of not the savior this time, but this time it's the synthetic evil saying it, right? And this sort of totalitarian is now saying it, and going forward with that idea that he is able to create. And so then that makes him superior, because his creation obviously can make this gigantic corporation and can always bring total order. And that's terrifying, because we see that the creation process isn't this bastardization. It's not even like that. It's more like this beautiful and sublime.
Yes.
It has that. And you can see it completely absent in Jared Leto's performance. And that's what makes his performance really good, despite the fact that he has so few lines. And that he has Sylvia Hoeks to be able to embody that sort of brutality. And that's what makes her role so pivotal. That's what makes her such a standout character and performance, because he's that backdrop to that totalitarian.
She's you might even say, his inner child, if you want to be completely petrified by him. Sylvia Hoeks is definitely what makes this film superior to Blade Runner 2049. Without her, it would be a great film.
Wait, you mean Blade 20?
I'm sorry, I mixed it up. 2049 better than Blade Runner, because it still would have been a good film without her, but her inclusion, her performance lifts this film into the ether of the masterwork. This is a sequel to one of the greatest, most beloved, most sophisticated science fiction films ever made. It is tantamount. It is equal to if 2010 A Space Odyssey were somehow better than 2001. Blade Runner 2049 is better than Blade Runner.
I respect that comparison.
It is insane that I am saying these words, but Sylvia Hoeks is a major reason why I'm saying that. And Denis Villeneuve, as captain of this brilliant, beautiful neon ship, wonderful job. I hope that this film gets reappraised as the masterwork that it is, much like Blade Runner 1 was reappraised as a cult masterpiece as well.
And I also wanted to, because you mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about Harrison Ford when he's drowning, and that
Yes,
scene
I wanted
when
to.
Sylvia Hoeks is fighting Ryan Gosling, and they're out in the tide waters being washed by the sea. And that's just sort of like then they're lost, and that sort of darkness in their fighting is like them being lost, and the lights inside the cabin, and it's shining on Harrison Ford, who we might think is not a replicant but a human. And so then you see Harrison Ford trying to struggle for his life, and the thing that ends the violence is the fact that Ryan Gosling's character, Officer K, tries to, or well, actually succeeds in saving Harrison Ford and having that human quality of wanting to
At a
help
great
him.
cost.
At a great cost, absolutely. And that is carried over and mirrored in so many other scenes. We see this scene after scene of this sort of these different aspects and elements of what it means to be an authentic human in this world, and really trying to grapple with the many different elements of what it means to be an authentic person and to live an authentic lifestyle, and the many different pitfalls and potholes on the road toward this eugenic utopia that is being forced on the people and creating so much strife and struggle and hardship. And that's beautiful, is that they're able to condense that entire message into 2 hours and 40 minutes.
The ineffable human spirit is paramount to the core of this film. How do you think Villeneuve, the director of the film, how do you think he views the human spirit? Where do you think he finds its value? How do you think he thinks that we could find our own spirits?
You know, I definitely got a bit of a vibe from him, from an Alan Moore kind of perspective of integrity, and how having that integrity is paramount to one of the liberations from our human depravity. Recognizing
yes,
that the
actually, yeah, okay, it's clicking now. Yes, because that's what happens when Officer K. I was saying he assumed his role. He assumed responsibility. When he found out he wasn't the savior, he became the Templar. He became the thing that had the protector.
I would like to say he became the warrior of Lady Wisdom.
Absolutely, he found integrity, because that entire battle, the reason it's even at all a balanced match between him and love is that he has integrity, and integrity is equal to the human spirit.
And despite the fact that she's genetically superior in every way, he's still able to grapple with her toe to toe and then still succeed at the very end.
Exactly. He has integrity, she has depravity. And you're really seeing those two. Oh, God, it's a conflict of the soul just displayed in perfect neon. Oh, my God, that's great. Neon splendor.
And
my mind's blown. You got to talk about something else.
I really enjoyed also just the amount of respect they had for both sides, the scientific CGI, and then they also had the blending of real artistic skills, not only in Sylvia Hoeks and her martial arts skills, but you also see it in other talented actors, and making sure that acting performance, even though it's synthetic, that they're actors and they're acting out this role, there's still that human element of them really taking on the mantle, the burden of what it means to be an actor. And
so often in modern films you find there's a disassociation between the actors you see on screen and how they're performing based upon their previous work, and that's because the actor on the screen that you're seeing is dealing with synthetic environment and possibly not even acting in person against the person they're in the scene with, against the fellow actor. So here, Villeneuve cultivated a truly as natural a set as he possibly could, because it's astonishing the amount of practical sets, the amount of practical craftsmanship went into this film, so that our characters could actually touch these analog set pieces, could actually reach out and touch them, could actually feel like they weren't just in front of a green screen or that they weren't just in a synthetic environment. And that's one of the major problems with modern films, is that everything is just so disassociated from what we know as reality. In fact, like, film acting is going to have to change its name from the Brando Clift idea of realism and authenticity to something a bit more contrived. We're going to have to rename modern school of acting. If we're not careful.
Right. So I wanted to jump
it shouldn't be a big fucking, it shouldn't, blow your mind that, oh no, these sets were real. That shouldn't blow your mind, but it does, and that's the misery of modern filmmaking. On this channel, we cover mostly, classic films, so this is a pretty big deal that we're covering one that came out so recently and is so masterful, in my opinion.
And like you're saying, that there's that authentic handling, really, of the actual scenes. And I really was glad that was happening, because, they were actually getting away from that sort of that visual CGI and still bringing in actual props, actual characters.
Actual actors.
Exactly.
Right?
And not having this sort of it could have been all completely drawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. And then that further is backdropped in the entire movie. You see this background of constant synthetic, right? Even in the scene when you see the girl and she's imagining things, and she has this sort of device and she's spinning it around, and it's this sort of this musical instrument that she's mastered, right? And she's creating these imaginations and these richly imagined and very human memories. It's in the backdrop of being in this synthetic bubble.
Yeah.
And then you see that reflected, and what I found interesting is how he turned that on its head. Denis Villeneuve, I mean, he was able to take that idea of something being synthetic, right? But then go to Harrison Ford, and then it's actually real because it's all abandoned, but that's still the real world.
Absolutely.
And what was really wonderful about that is how masterful Denis Villeneuve was in carrying that idea that even if you have a devastated and destroyed world, it's better to live in that world than to go into the world of corporations and live underneath the corporate boot heel. Because what we're seeing here increasingly in our societies and in this globalized really world is we're seeing this sort of mega corporation really pushing itself onto our society, pushing on this idea of consumerism. And Harrison Ford doesn't want a single piece of it. He doesn't want a part of it. He doesn't want to be involved in it. He wants to drink real whiskey. He wants to muse over his real authentic memories, and he wants to defend a living human being that he had created.
The film noir anti-hero was forced to age, and also forced to answer for his past. The point of a film noir anti-hero is that he never has to do those things because he's by definition doomed by his own genre. And here Villeneuve makes Rick Deckard answer some questions, answer the past and face the past, and also face the fact that he is a supporting character in the continuation of his own story. But then Agent K, or Officer K, has to pay the price as well, by even though he's the star of that story, he's not the hero, he's not the savior.
That's a very good point, yeah. And this carries on, and you see this sort of, it's how the ocean in that scene earlier was washing him, kind of doing this sort of this baptism ceremony, but it had to do it in a violent way because that's how enmeshed he was in this sort of world, this pseudo world of his in this past, rather than living in the present. And the fact that the water is also mirrored in the other scene with Joy when she first reaches her hand out and feels the rain for the first time. And that's sort of how water is this sort of cleansing, has this cleansing quality to it, and washing us and making us realize, what really matters is this sort of this pursuit of purity, innocence, and not trying to have this sort of consumerist world and having that consume.
Exactly, and love was designed, programmed, brought up, the right hand, the inner child of a self-styled god, a self-styled pharaoh. But it's really when she is drowned, baptized in this overflowing water, that's where she sees the true face of finality as well. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, really fantastic ideas are brought up by that scene because you can't help but parallel it as well to the Tears in the Rain monologue and whether or not Villeneuve supports that or he is showing that in action, showing that as a real physical set piece.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how to take it either, but I do get that suspicion, that hunch that what he's really trying to convey is the message of that cleansing
Of course.
aspect.
And I believe the expression Sylvia Hoeks leaves us with is an expression of, defeat, but of clarity, cleansed, transparency, even. So I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that's also reflective in Ryan Gosling realizing exactly what his role is in this adventure.
And there's a lot more to be said. I really also wanted to bring up the ideas of like how there's like this hatred by modern society, and hating the synthetic idea of replicants. And you see that in the opening
Skinners.
scenes. Yeah, and then you also see it in his dinner. And then you see it further how like these people are so fed up and embittered because what they really do want is that authentic living, and they were robbed of it.
Yeah.
And that is the source of their anger, the source of their hatred and violence. And that's not the solution, is it?
No.
The solution is that imaginative and embracing, it's really consummate is what I would say. It's a consummate kind of love, and not the love that we see, the synthetic love we see from love. We actually see a more consummate love and tenderness, really, gentleness, coming from that father-daughterly bond that's never
Absolutely.
united, but
That's why
still
Villeneuve
there.
ends directly on that meeting, and also surrenders to the very human fact that whatever words passed between them is too private, too real, too human, too intimate to actually share with us who've been watching this for 3 hours. He ends it and gives them their privacy.
And that's beautiful because not only are we in like kind of a mass surveillance kind of society where even the most private of moments is exposed and then used. We're seeing that in the movie as well. We're seeing that he's giving, Denis Villeneuve is giving respect to that privacy, to that human intimacy.
Yeah.
And
It's about integrity at that point. And Villeneuve is demonstrating that his narrative, his film has the integrity of privacy, of security, of respect.
That's a very good point, a very good perspective. I totally agree with that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And another thing I do want to mention in this somewhere is that this is probably my favorite Hans Zimmer score. It has all the cliche Zimmer stuff that we have been learned to know from Nolan films, the but it does have very nice piano motifs throughout as well. And I do think that those cliche moments serve this film with purpose as opposed to simply atmosphere. I think that's a very purposeful score for a very purposeful film.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. And you know, the fact that they do have that, yeah, very true, very true. So I wanted to carry that on, and you see that he's constantly toying, not even toying with, but he's just like contrasting them at all times, right? He's contrasting authenticity, and he's contrasting that with inauthenticity, and he's really just laying out the landscape of what it takes to be an authentic person, to live an authentic life. And he goes with it, and he's so masterful in the way and the details. You can tell that he really understands what he's trying to convey. He's really thought and meditated on this. And there's that deeper level of authenticity, and for the sake of it, for the sake of being able to show what that would look like, right?
Absolutely.
So that's beautiful.
Man, my worldview's been changed in biblical neon, man. Like, this is so great. Do you have some closing thoughts or some more thoughts?
All I have to say is like how awakening this movie is, because it shows like the folly of this sort of consumerist society that we're occupying, and how we have this packaged meat, and we have this corporatized, like, isn't that like what pornography really is all about? Is this?
Yeah, and isn't all most of the services offered by the Wallace Corporation in this dystopia mostly pornographic?
Exactly. And so you see that in our society, and the way out of it is to just reject it wholesale.
Yeah, in fact, like Officer K took a pornographic product like Joy and tried to make her sacred.
Yeah, and that's because I think he's making a very complex message.
The
right
holy
there.
and the profane.
Yeah, he's trying to show that, the profane, you can still get out of it. You can still get out of that by recognizing what real love is. But, so many people are just enmeshed in that, right? They just, they consume it every single day. It's normalized. And the fact that he knows it's normalized and he's able to make it not only just not normal, alien.
That's right.
And that's why it's put into this very big, very huge billboard that is also a simulated body of the perfect woman kind of thing. And Joy has everything that you want and she has everything that you can see. And that is so powerful, is that he's able to say, if you want to live a more authentic life, you do have to put aside these childish notions of love. You have to really explore life and enjoy life, and you have to have a tenderness and acceptance of where love comes from. It doesn't come from this consumerist, it comes from this connection, a human connection.
Love is childish, and therefore love is harmful. And joy is naive, therefore joy is
susceptible to harm.
Damaged. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but integrity is unbreakable. But that's something that you cannot be sold. That's something that you have to discover.
That's right.
And it's you usually make that discovery through self-defeat.
And that, I think he's even more masterful, because he says that the only way you can really accept and embrace that defeat is by the existential dread, the realization that this is so beyond and out of control, that the only way that people can really see beyond it is by imagining the total end, which is the extinguishment of all human life.
I want to be honest with you guys watching this video. Normally when we go into a discussion video, me and David, Craig, Joey, anybody, I normally have the film pretty figured out already in my head. Like I know how I feel about it, and I have analyzed it pretty well. And I thought I did that with this movie, but talking with David on this discussion, you are hearing in real time, like, me actually figuring out a movie in a whole new way that I didn't look at before, and I appreciate it even more. You're hearing an actual real discussion and like analysis. I didn't have prepared.
We don't really do
points.
that. Yeah. And I think that's what's beautiful about this conversation, is it's just another way. It's another level of authenticity, because we have that connection that's happening. We're seeing the same movie. We're understanding a lot of the very complex elements being conveyed in a simple way. And I am also seeing this movie for the first time. So this is very real and authentic for me as well. So
I love this movie. This is great. It should be one of my favorites now.
Yeah, you guys have to watch Blade Runner 2049 if you have.
And if you
I really hope you have.
If you haven't and you watched all of this, I don't know what to tell you. You're a really big fan of the channel, though. It's like, I don't want to watch these. Who wants to watch the rules of the game or 2040? I'll just listen to them say it. It's the same thing.
That's great.
God, but this is such a great, fantastic film that almost has no right being as amazing as it is, because like I said, it's a continuation of the fucking Old Testament of brilliant subversive science fiction. It's better. It's just a better film. Villeneuve gave us a film that Ridley Scott must be very excited by, but more importantly, Philip K. Dick would be wildly impressed by as well, if Philip K. Dick were still with us.
And I did want to make a closing response, because there's also another deeper and more subtle thing that Denis Villeneuve is communicating. And I recently was reading up on Consciousness Explained by Daniel Dennett, and he talks about this how comprehension works, right? And then this actually bleeds into everything. So naturally, it's going to bleed into Blade Runner 2049. And what's really happening is Denis Villeneuve knows that there are many actors, many skilled people with many different skill sets, and they all combined have this element and this foundation of what they've experienced in the real world, and they're bringing it to the table in this film. And a great example of how comprehension works is to really like think about certain things. I bring up the idea of the triangle of fire used by firefighters. This is a really easy to way explain how comprehension works. You have this sort of triangle, and it's the catalyst, the energy, and the fuel. And that's like embodied in just a basic campfire, right? You have the wooden log and the fuel, and then you have the spark from the lighter, and then you also have the catalyst, which is the air, the oxygen. And the firefighter knows what the triangle of fire is and the 100 different ways in which it's used, and therefore he can put out a fire. And having that understanding is comprehension. And it takes a lot of meditation onto what starts a fire, really, and the many different ways a fire can happen. And so Denis Villeneuve is a master filmmaker because he understands how human comprehension works. And I can tell he understands that because he brings in all of these people with all of their different skill sets to really make this powerful, emotive, and impressionable message. And I highly recommend you watch it. Please watch it.
I think that's a phenomenal place to end it. Once again, I'm Zachary Conan. This is David. And 2049, it's a masterwork. So thanks for watching the video. Subscribe, like, comment, share, doing the YouTube shill. But we're going to try to come out with these discussions at least every week. Been doing them every Monday, so keep a lookout for them. But yes, Blade Runner 2049, Neon Socrates, brilliant, beautiful, wonderful, endlessly perfect.